Ugh, buyer's remorse. It's this gross mixture of regret and guilt and sometimes even a little bit of fear, depending on how big of a mistake of a purchase we made. Coming up next, a really simple way to deal with buyer's remorse so we can stay on track with simplifying our kids' toys. Also, 2 simple ways to prevent it in the future. And I'll even show you the thing that I bought for my kids most recently that I regret. That's next. Well, hi, I'm Dawn from theminimalmom.com. I really love sharing about our family's minimalism journey. And whether your goal is minimalism or just somewhere in between of simplifying and having maybe a more peaceful household, I really love sharing tips of how you can achieve that quickly. And so we started this series on toys a little while ago. I thought I was doing one video on toys, but turns out that there's actually a lot more that goes into it. And well, it makes sense because if it were a simple task, then we all would have done it a year or 2 ago, right? Okay, let's talk about buyer's remorse. If you've watched my first video that talks about how you can really quickly pare down all of your kids' toys, part of it is boxing up a bunch of your kids' toys. But the problem is sometimes when we start that process, we start adding up in our head how much all of those toys cost us. And it can really be a lot. And so I don't want that to stand in your way, because the truth is that if they're not using them, if they've outgrown them, if they've never used them, just because we hang on to them a little bit longer, it does not mean that they're going to someday play with them. And it doesn't put the money back in our pocket. In fact, it kind of works the other way, where every time we look at it, we're reminded of the purchase that we made, and it kind of taunts us. And so I think the best thing you can do is to get those things out of your house. So step 1, when we're dealing with buyer's remorse, the first thing is just to understand that we all do it. I bought this Barbie doll house for my girls for Christmas because they were playing with Barbies a lot. They went to a friend's house and came home and talked about how much they loved this Barbie doll house they had. And I even remember that growing up, my sister and I used to play with our Barbie doll house all of the time. So it just seemed like a good idea. Well, the problem is they played with it Christmas Day and rarely ever touched it after that. And so now every time I look at it, all I think is, I wish I had my $80 back that I spent. It needs to go. I can't hang on to it any longer thinking that if I put it in a different room or move it to a different space that they're gonna magically start playing with it. We all know our kids well enough. That's not how it works. So if you're familiar with the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, then you're probably familiar with this philosophy as well. Here's what Marie Kondo has to say about it. Look at the item and say, thank you for teaching me what my kids like or don't like and what they play with or not. So honestly, I can look at this Barbie doll house and I can say, you know what? Thank you that my girls had something big and impressive to open on Christmas morning. That was awesome. And then thank you for reconfirming in my mind that they don't really ever play with the big things. In fact, I have another video about this linked down below. In my experience, they never play with the big pieces of toys or furniture or those types of things. And I should have stuck to my instinct. And so this just reinforces that. Oh, and yes, it does feel a little weird to be talking to a toy sometimes, but it really does work. So how do we prevent this in the future? Well, I have to tell you, there's one thing that has made the biggest difference when it comes to my husband and I for impulse buying. And what it is, it's a 30-day wait list. And I have a video about this that I'll link to down below as well. But basically, anytime we want to purchase something over $25, it goes on the list, and then we have to wait 30 days until we decide if we're going to purchase it or not. You know what's funny? 99% of the things I put on that list, we never end up purchasing. We have to remember that marketers are brilliant, right? They are so good at convincing us that this thing or this toy or this item is going to make our life so much better. But we all know, we've been around long enough to know that that hardly ever holds true. All these toys that they get excited about and they see commercials on TV and they just have to have it, they get it, and a couple days later it's old news. So we just have to remember that, and this 30-day wait list completely helps with that. There's times I'll go back and look, I'm like, I can't believe I put that on there. It's life-changing to your finances. But if you're like, well, that's great, I don't have 30 days, their birthday's in 2 days, well, try even just sitting on it for 24 hours. And then the second way to prevent buyer's remorse is to pay with cash. It still stinks. We spent $80 in cash on Craigslist on this dollhouse, and every time I look at it, I'm like, I wish I could just have my $80 back. But at least it was cash. It feels so much worse when we're putting it on a credit card and we know we're paying interest and there's other things we could have spent that money on. And so whenever possible, pay cash for items. If we don't have the money for something now and we put it on a credit card, I don't know how it works in your house, but in the past, it never ended up that we had more money down the road to pay off our credit card bill. It was just this thing that was always hanging over our head. Well, I truly hope it helps to know that you aren't alone when it comes to toys and buyer's remorse. In fact, why don't you go ahead and leave a comment down below with something you regret buying? We truly have all been there, and sometimes it's good just to get it out in the open. A thumbs up is the best compliment that you can give us, and be sure to subscribe so that we can keep in touch.